What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about the 100-400mm. It's an L series lens by Canon. I'm going to go over a couple of little things. I said I was going to make this video. I am making this video. I had a request about this lens specifically, so I'm going to basically just get right into it. So what this is I don't know how recently this lens came out, but basically this is my new favorite lens for shooting sports. Really doesn't matter what kind of sport, this lens does really well in low light. I was surprised. I've shot in cloudy conditions. I've shot in, you name it. Like, I've shot in every possible condition with this lens other than maybe rain, which I have no doubt, just by seeing how smooth this lens operates. There's a pretty good seal. It doesn't have that old school sort of pumping motion, and I think it would actually hold up really well. Most of the L series lenses are a little bit more dirt resistant, water resistant, stuff like that. Not to mention, obviously, different coatings, higher quality glass. This lens in particular, the aperture is 4.5 to 5.6. I've pushed this lens well past 5.6 just for sharpness and clarity, and it's done wonderfully. This is the ISM 2. As far as a zoom lens goes, the image stabilization on this is unbelievable. The images are crisp. Check out some of these shots. These are unedited. I haven't applied any filters. This is as raw as I could add it into this little video clip here. Really crisp. Lots of different light conditions. I have just really been impressed with this lens. So, what do you get when you purchase this lens? So when you purchase this lens, it's going to come with its own little carrying case. I think this is awesome. It's got a couple of straps on either side. You got these little guys here. So I actually use the one in back, and I clip it to my camera bag, and it sort of hangs, kind of like those roll-up blankets that you used to see on the back of like a backpacker's backpack. Backpacker's backpack. Anyway, all right, tongue twisters. So anyway, let's get into the actual lens here. So what you're going to get is, you'll get this lens, obviously. It'll also usually come with a lens hood. This lens hood is pretty interesting, and I'll show you why here if I can actually get this thing to connect. All right, so clips in like this, quite large for a lens hood. And I don't know how well you guys can see this because, and I'll mention this real quick, I am actually shooting this video as an experiment for myself. I'm shooting this on an EOS 5 DSR. I was told that this camera sucks for video. So I usually shoot my videos on EOS R, which is a mirrorless camera, and I use a different lens. So I'm going to throw a little kicker at you guys, and you guys can let me know what you think about the actual lens and what you think about the video quality, because I'm really interested. I'm shooting this on a Canon Fisheye lens, but it's a newer L series lens that's supposed to correct a lot of the chromatic aberrations and some of that fisheye effect, which I have seen, and you can see it. You can see it here. You can flatten these images out quite nicely without really much of that fisheye effect that you get in like super view on a GoPro or something like that. So super high quality lens. I really like this lens, but I've never shot any video with it. So I figured, I'll just shoot the video today. I was going to do one on this lens anyway, but instead of using my normal setup, I want to use this. So thank you for being a part of my experiment. All right, so let's get into talking about this lens specifically. I'm not going to get into the glass coatings and all of that. It's just not necessary. Basically, all you need to know about this guy is it's a 100 to 400 meter lens, or millimeter lens. The aperture is 4.5 to 5.6. It has really, really smooth zoom built into this. You can actually adjust also, you're able to adjust how tight or smooth the transition is between zoom, right? So right now, really tight. This is really, really tight. You can switch it back down to smooth and it's just butter. I mean, it literally, when I open it up, it wants to just fold on itself, you know? So very, very smooth. So I don't really ever use this feature. I'm not 100% sure. It's about a quarter turn feature. I'm not really 100% sure why this is a thing. You know, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I don't really ever need this. I like a smooth zoom pretty much all the time. I guess you could tighten it up if you find a zoom length that you want to stay at and you want to keep a consistent zoom length and your objects aren't changing depth of field on you, going further away or becoming closer. I guess then you could hit the tightener so that you don't accidentally bump it to be in a different zoom. That would be the only usage I could think of. But anyway, so moving on. This is, I'll show you guys the glass here. There's a little release button here. Never try to force the lens hood off. There's a little release button. You push that, comes off, easy as butter. This here, if you guys can see the glass on this, really, really nice. Takes a really clear image, obviously. This lens also has a couple different mounting options. I always recommend, if you're shooting on a DSLR camera, mirrorless or otherwise, don't mount the camera to the tripod. This is just a little beginner tip. There is a tripod mount on the bottom of this extension here. Now, this can also be moved, all right? So if you loosen this little dial right here, if you loosen this little dial, you can move this to wherever you'd like it to be, right? So wherever's comfortable for you when you're operating the lens. And I'll readjust this later, but anyway, when you mount this, make sure to mount it here. Or if you have a side mount and you mount it on, let's say, a gimbal head on a tripod, that's what these are for, so you can side mount it on your gimbal head, right? For 2-axis or, you know, for 3-axis or whatever. But yeah, mount it on this, that way you get a nice balance between the camera body, the lens at full extension. It should almost make that entire combo weightless as it travels around on your tripod. On a monopod, it's a little bit different, but same thing. Mount it here on a monopod, you're gonna like it a lot more. You get a lot smoother shots out of. It performs a little bit better. It's not so front heavy. So obviously, it's got manual focus, autofocus. You have 2 settings here for manual focus and autofocus, obviously. Switch them back and forth, nothing special about that. You've also got a section here for your autofocus. When it's enabled, you can tell it to find your point of focus at the full range of the lens, meaning that it's going to try to look for focusing points or contrast points between 100 millimeters and 400 millimeters, right? That's where it's looking for contrast points. But say you're not shooting anything that's going to get within 3 meters of you. So, you know, everything you're shooting is going to be far away. You switch it over here, 3 meters to infinity. A lot of people get confused by what these little symbols mean. They're on other lenses, IS, EF, USM, you know, 18 to 55s, 55s to 135s, whatever. The L series will have a lot of these. You see them on macro lenses as well, but it's reversed. So what this means is this tells the camera, don't even try to focus on objects close to me because I don't want to focus on anything close to me. I'm going to be shooting things that are far away, so it actually shortens the time of focus so the camera isn't going through this wide range of focusing points. It's only focusing on things that are farther away, or at least 3 meters or farther, so that if, let's say, I shoot a lot of wakeboarding, so let's say the rider is riding across in front of me, and I'm shooting and I'm tracking him and I lose him, because a ramp is right in front, but it's closer to me, it's not gonna refocus on the ramp. It'll just ignore the ramp and pick right back up at the same focal length as where I was. Super, super helpful. I didn't understand at the beginning. Don't feel bad if you have been shooting on full and it's like taking a long time to focus and you're like, man, this kind of sucks. Use this feature, you'll make your life a lot easier. Okay, so next into the stabilizer. This lens, by far, has one of the best stabilization modes I have ever seen on a lens this size. Usually they're shaky. The stabilizer doesn't seem to do a whole lot. I've shot this on the EOS R and I got unbelievable video out of it. Obviously, as you can see, it tracks really, really nicely. I did a video about just on tracking. So what this means is you've got these 3 modes, okay? And basically what this says is you've got stabilizer on and off, all right? And then you've got 3 modes to the stabilizer as well. So if you turn it off, obviously it's off. When you're shooting video or photo on a tripod, this is very important. Turn your stabilizer off if you're on a tripod, okay? This stabilizer will actually, when it's on the tripod, it has to send out little pulses. It'll actually take away from your quality of your video or photo, okay? So just a tip, if you're on a tripod and you're shooting a still shot like what I'm shooting right now, no stabilizer, because it'll actually end up taking away just a little bit. On a lens this good, you're probably not gonna see a difference. It's not gonna be like perceptible, but it is there and you can avoid it. So might as well just know that simple rule and make you a better photographer or videographer. So the stabilizer, when you turn it on, is you're gonna have these stabilizer modes, 1, 2, or 3. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm not really sure about this this wide-angle lens I've got set up here, but again, it's just my experiment. So these stabilizer modes are very interesting because what happens is you've got mode 1, 2, or 3. 1 is like all-purpose general use stabilizer, meaning it stabilizes up and down, horizontally, and that's pretty much it. It will run all the time. One thing I did notice, if you use an adapter for a, let's say like the EOS R, different size, so I have to adapt up to a larger millimeter, you do hear, it does produce some noise. So I would use this lens, like my EOS 5 DSR has the standard size connection, so I can pop this lens right in. Unlike, for example, this guy here, this is a 50mm L series. If you notice, this one has much larger connection point, and I'll just put them up together so y'all can see what I'm talking about, because I know this doesn't make sense to a lot of people. It's very hard to see the difference. There is a difference. This one is larger. So you need an adapter to adapt up or adapt down. So to put a larger lens on a smaller body or vice versa, you have to have an adapter. It does, when you use a stabilizer, you can actually hear the stabilizer running, which I haven't found is really a big deal. I use a directional microphone anyway, so no biggie. But it is something to be aware of. So back to the stabilizer modes. 1 is your general purpose. When you click over into, whoops, too far. All right, had to cut that out. My dog started barking at the mailman. Anywho, so with this lens, we're talking about mode number 2. All right, this is stabilization mode number 2. What number 2 does is the panning mode. As you're tracking subjects backwards and forwards, it's going to stabilize the camera. If you're tracking subjects up and down, the stabilizer is not active for that. This helps you increase your focusing speed just a little bit because it prioritizes panning mode over any other forms of stabilization up and down. And so it's only using 2 axes. When you switch, and this is great for sports where you're on a level field, but if you were shooting planes, for example, that are going up and doing loop-de-loops and going down and all around, mode 2 is not the mode you want to be on, okay? Mode 3, very interesting. Mode 3 definitely is not made for video. Mode 3 is specifically for photos. Mode 3, and they don't tell you what this is, you just have to figure this out or read the manual. Nobody does, but I do. So Mode 3 is what happens, the camera prioritizes focusing over everything else. So it wants you to get the crispest image that you possibly can, and to do that it has to turn off the stabilizer temporarily. So check this out. When you're in mode 3, you're tracking a subject, right? So I'm watching a wakeboarder, he's gonna hit the ramp, he goes up on the ramp, I'm tracking him the whole way, I've got him in perfect focus, but he's moving fast and I'm not on a tripod and it might be a little shaky, right? As I push down the first phase shutter, okay, my focusing shutter, about I don't know what a quarter of a second, a half a second, whatever it is, before when I press the shutter, it turns on the stabilizer. So it allows me to focus. When I snap the photo, it turns on the stabilizer, so I get a nice stable image because my focal point has already been determined. So this is great for when you're walking around with it. You're not on a tripod. You're going to be in different spaces, you're going to be at different elevations. The subjects you're shooting are at different elevations, different spaces. The speeds are varying, what they're doing is varying. You know, you're shooting a soccer team, for example, and you're shooting the players first, and you're trying to get that perfect shot right before the foot makes contact with the ball or right after or whatever. But then you want to track the ball as well. Anything you want to do with this, that type of scenario, I like mode 3. Especially for photography when it's either cloudy or your light isn't as good as, say, 1 p.m. on a sunny day, you know, or you're shooting under stadium lighting, use mode 3 because you want because if your photo is not clear, if you don't have good contrast, it's not nice and sharp, then it doesn't really matter that the stabilizer was working and it's not shaky because your picture's going to suck anyway, and then what was the whole point? It wasn't really worth anything. So that prioritizes focus over everything else. So if you're having trouble focusing, switch to mode 3 and see if that doesn't help you out. But again, just play around with it and see, you know, whichever. Mode 1, if you're not sure, keep it on mode 1 until you get some practice and you get confident switching it into other modes. But anyway, that's Canon's general description on these modes. I have found quite a bit of difference with these different modes, but you know, again, it's going to apply to how you shoot and what you like to go out there and photograph. Night photography, absolutely amazing with this camera. Did these photos of the moon recently. Just crystal clear. I was super impressed. I am not out in the middle of Utah somewhere. I am in Florida. I'm in a populated city. There is tons of light pollution. There isn't even a good spot to go in Florida. There's no blackout zones at all. Even in the Everglades, there's still light pollution. I was able to get this shot of the moon from my backyard just as a test doing this, using this lens. And I'll obviously, you know, you can see how I was shooting because I know everybody wants to know that. I was shooting with an EOS 5 DSR, so it's a 50 megapixel camera. With this lens and the EOS 5 DSR, unbelievable. You know, it was a full moon recently, but of course it was raining that night, so, you know, waxing gibbous is the best you get. But anyway, really impressed with this at nighttime. That shot I was actually shooting at 11 or 12 f-stop, believe it or not. So just so you guys know, you know, for beginners, I know a lot of people read the lens and they say, okay, 4.5 to 5.6, you know, I better stay right inside. You don't have to. You do not have to stay within the f-stop range that's on the lens. It doesn't mean you're going to get a bad photo. What I do is I change my f-stop and my shutter speed. And for night shooting, when I shoot the moon, ISO stays at 100, I lock it up. When I'm shooting sports, ISO is on auto all the time. You don't have to stay in this range. You know, I went all the way, I did a test all the way up to f-stop 22, just to see the difference, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about here as we go through this. You notice the difference between 11, 12, 13, 15, 18, 20. These f-stops are going to get you more clarity, especially at a distance like that, you know, of the moon. It's also reflecting light directly back at you, so there's a whole other thing that comes into that. But my rule of thumb, people say, hey, you know, I've got a 200mm lens and I want to get the best shot I can at the moon. Okay, great. I want you to shoot at 50 or 60 shutter speed, 1/50, 1/60 to start with. Set it up and start at f10 or 11 and put your ISO on 100 and then increase incrementally each thing. Raise it up to f12 and do a shot at 1/40, 50, 60, see which one looks better. Raise the f-stop one more time. So these are the tests you want to do. What'll happen is you can watch as many videos as you want. You can read Canon manuals until your eyes go crossed. You got to go out there and do your own experiments. It helps you learn. It's the best teaching is hands-on teaching, is OJT, on the job. That's the best way to learn. So I go out and I just do little experiments, you know, and I found out, wow, I can really push this lens, this particular lens, a lot farther than any of my other zoom lenses. Probably just because it's an incredible lens and it's newer technology and all of that. I will note though, I'm going to show you guys the two differences. There's not a huge difference, but there is a difference. And I was really surprised by this. I applied a filter for some of my moon shots. And where the hell are they? Here we go. So I applied a filter for a couple of my moon shots. And I haven't tried it. I have a polarizing filter that I just got, really good polarizing filter, and I want to try that one. I haven't tried that at night yet. I'm just sort of experimenting. I've used it in the day and I really love it because I shoot a lot of water subjects, and you know, polarizing and water really work nice together. So this one is a UV 77. This lens is a UV lens, which I didn't previously know that this was even something you could shoot at night. I didn't really know it was used at night. But again, I don't know everything about photography, so you know, that's why I like to experiment and try stuff out. When I put this guy on there, this lens was, I got a clearer picture of the moon than without it, and I said, okay, right there, I'm sold. It was at a shutter speed of 50, or shutter speed of 50, f-stop 11, ISO 100 with the 77 UV filter on. I don't know if it really is going to make a huge difference if you spend a lot of money on a filter or a little amount of money, but whatever it is, I was really impressed with the difference in the quality of images. So anyway, let's summarize all this. 100 to 400 millimeter Canon L series IS II USM 4.5 to 5.6. I gotta highly recommend this. I'm not sponsored by Canon. I just really love this lens. If you like shooting sports, this is worth the money. You can buy them used, and most people who have made the purchase of buying an expensive lens like this have probably taken really good care of it. It also comes with its own carrying case, so chances are, if somebody bought this and you want to pick one up used, you're gonna get just as good a lens as if you bought it brand new. So, you know, when it comes to L series lenses, I usually tell people, absolutely, if you don't have $2 grand to drop on this lens and you can get, your budget's $1,000 and you can get a used one for $1,000, yes, buy it, absolutely. It was probably taken care of. There's a good chance of that. But yeah, other than that, please post any questions you guys have about this thing. You know, anything else you guys want to see, I'm more than happy to make a video on. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. And I will see you guys later.